I belong to a poor family by chance. After my father's death, when poverty became more prevalent in the family, I was forced to leave home and work to earn some money. I used to do small jobs in different places. One day, while riding a rickshaw, I met a woman, and after a normal conversation, she told me that she and her daughters make bangles and then sell them in the market. Seeing the conditions of my house, she offered me to work with her, which I immediately accepted because I was in dire need of work and she lived near my house. The next morning, I went to her house and saw the woman, her daughter and daughter-in-law, making bangles. There was a lot of equipment lying around, which showed that she worked a lot. After explaining a little to me, the three of them started their work and I kept watching them carefully. It took some time, but I understood the work. The three of them worked very diligently. I was also very impressed by their morals, but here the same calculation: there were 2 days of moonlight, then a dark night. After some time, she, who was so nice at the beginning, started behaving strangely. She used to give me half of the work she was asked to do. I could feel that her attitude was a bit forced, but she never had the courage to ask. A forced person has to think many times before saying anything, and I was forced at that time. One day, when I went to her house, there were sounds of fighting coming from the room. I sat quietly and started working. Just then, that woman came out of the room, grabbed my arm and started pushing me out of the house. I did not understand what was happening and I was scared and angry at this insult. Before I could say anything, her son came from behind and let go of my hand and came between us and asked me to leave the house. As soon as I turned around, I could hear the woman's voice, which made it clear that I was involved in these things, no matter what. But then I thought it was best to come quietly. Then again I was very saddened by the humiliation of not going to their house. 2 days later, the son of this woman came to our house. I was not at home at that time, but he went with Amma. When I came, Amma told me that he wanted to marry me. Hearing this, I was surprised. Amma asked me, so I told her the conditions of their house. Amma also got very upset and decided not to have a relationship. This woman's son, whose name was Faisal, now came to our house every day and asked Amma for her consent to marry. After all, she was an orphan. How long would Amma refuse such a person who was not asking for dowry or anything else? And the biggest thing for Amma was that he loved me, which he proved many times and even fought with his family. His family did not accept this at all. Well, I was also impressed by his love and decided to marry him. We got married simply and he took me to his house. As his family was not happy, no one welcomed us and they kept doing their work silently. Faisal took me to a room where some broken things were lying. The room was in a very bad condition. He made me sit there and went out. My new life had begun, but I was not even welcomed into this life. On the contrary, many accusations were made against me. Faisal's house was very small. He had built it a couple of months ago on a small piece of land, but its rooms had neither doors nor a gate. Light cloth curtains were hung. At first, I was very scared that it was such an unsafe house, which did not even have a gate. Anyone could come in at any time. But after a few days, my fear subsided. Despite everything, Faisal took great care of me. He did not let me do any work. Seeing all this, his family kept grumbling inside but did not say anything because since we got married, no one had called me or talked to Faisal. Faisal often explained to me that everything would get better with time, but instead of getting better, everything got worse. Our communication with Faisal's family was limited, but as we came and went, we started talking to each other. The women of their house used to tell me various things that made me very sad. There was no one with whom I could share anything. Faisal also used to go in the morning for work and come back at night. At night, when we both would sit and talk peacefully, Faisal's younger brother, i.e. my brother-in-law, who used to drive a rickshaw and park the rickshaw outside the house at night, would play strange songs in such a loud voice that the people sitting in the room could not hear each other. I used to get very irritated by this habit of his, while they all used to enjoy harassing us. Once, I told Faisal to stop him and he went to stop him, but the whole family got up and rushed to beat him. I got very scared after seeing this and immediately separated Faisal and brought him to the room. After that day, I had never said anything to Faisal because after seeing the animal-like behavior of his family, I did not want anything to happen to Faisal. I was in my husband's house, but my in-laws had made our life miserable. I was beautiful, because of which my mother-in-law was often jealous of me. She was spreading various rumors about me in her neighborhood as well. I realized this when one day I organized a milad and went to the neighborhood to distribute rice. After sitting there for a while and talking, I started crying so much that I started crying while sitting there. Seeing all this, the neighbors started consoling me. Then I started coming to their house and she also often used to come and sit near me. My mother-in-law did not like this and started fighting with our neighbors for no reason, which made her stop coming to our house. I was not used to such behavior and my mother had taught me to live in peace and harmony. One day I went to my mother-in-law and tried to fix everything, but the result was the opposite of what I wanted, and my mother-in-law, Nand and the mother-in-law, all three of them, started telling me stories. I listened silently. Only then did Faisal come from upstairs and saw all this. Faisal forbade me from going to them in the future. A few days later, my health deteriorated and when I got checked by the doctor, it was found that I was suffering from OMID. Faisal was very upset after hearing this. I was happy and went to my mother with sweets, but she called the child illegitimate and threw the box of sweets, which made Faisal and I very sad. Faisal then realized that his family was not sincere with him and could not see him happy. They left me at my mother's house so that I could be taken care of properly, but there my sister-in-law was taking care of my in-laws. My mother could not say anything. I got fed up and asked Faisal to take me back home. Now the expenses were increasing. My medicine and food expenses were becoming so much that Faisal's small job could not cover it. I thought that a little parlor would be useful. Why not make a parlor in one of the rooms of the house and start sewing at the same time? While looking for a job, I found out a lot of things while cleaning a parlor. When Faisal came at night, he took his advice. He was very happy that he would also be busy this way. The next day, during the parlor setup, my in-laws came to the room opposite our room and they did not allow him to do so. The matter was discussed and fought for a long time. Finally, the house was divided and we were given a part that had a room and a small veranda in front. We made a small parlor in the veranda in front of the room where the women of the neighborhood could come. The next day, Faisal brought some posters to give the parlor look. In this way, for a few months, our parlor continued to run like this and it would generate enough income to cover our extra expenses. I had become the mother of a daughter, whom we named Mehak. With the arrival of Mehak, spring came into Faisal and my life. We were busy living our lives separately from everyone. Without caring, my in-laws were so angry. Summer had begun. Now, when Faisal would come at night, after eating, Faisal and I would go for a walk in the neighborhood and come home after some time. I had no idea that our character would be ruined just for this. On the day of the holiday, we were sitting in the room playing with Mehak when my brother-in-law came and asked Faisal to change the curtain outside. Faisal, when I saw the curtain, it was perfectly fine, so they said, why change it if it's fine? It was such a big deal that my brother-in-law got angry and started hitting Faisal. Seeing them, the rest of the family came and supported my brother-in-law without asking. My brother-in-law and brother-in-law pulled Faisal into the yard and in this way the three brothers started fighting among themselves. My brother-in-law picked up a brick lying nearby and hit Faisal on the back. Seeing this, he couldn't help but stare at me. I slapped my brother-in-law in the face, which made him angry and tore up the posters in my parlor and started breaking other people's belongings. The fight was so intense that even the people of the neighborhood came to help me. Only then did my brother-in-law start accusing me, and if we, husband and wife, went out for a walk, it was interpreted so wrongly. After 2 hours of fighting, things cooled down a bit, so Faisal took me to my mother's house. Faisal's clothes were torn. Mother was surprised to see this. Then she told him everything and we were advised to stay in a separate house. After a few days, we decided to move to a new house by picking up our belongings from there. But when we were supposed to move the belongings, Faisal had to go to another city for some work and he asked me to move the belongings with my brother. But my brother also did not go because of my sister-in-law. So I took my younger brother and went to my in-laws' house so that I could pack the belongings. When I got there, I found that there was no one in the house except my brother-in-law. I quietly went to my room and started packing the belongings. Just then, my brother-in-law sent my brother away for some work and himself came into the room and stood up. I found it strange that he stood up, but I did not pay attention to him. That's when his words rang in my ears, in which he was mentioning the slap I had received. Hearing this, the sheet I was holding fell down. I felt that he was now intending to take revenge for the slap. I apologized for taking the matter seriously, but I did not realize it at the time, but he started laughing and started moving towards me. As soon as he came close to me, I pushed him. I ran outside but there was no safe place where I could hide. I ran into the parlor and closed its broken door and stood up with support. But that animal-like person had even opened a small door. He pushed hard and I also fell on the ground with the door and started apologizing to him, but he was full of revenge. He kept moving towards me and the next moment, destroying my honor and soothing his ego, leaving me crying in an unbearable state, went out. After some time, she remained lying there and then sat up when her younger brother came. That innocent child, seeing my condition, could not understand what injustice had been done to me. Faisal and I had shifted to a separate house. Faisal had never returned to see his family. We were happy in our lives. Our daughter was growing up. Perhaps this was the price of my silence. I had left justice to Allah and Allah did justice. One day Faisal told me that his younger brother had suffered a stroke. I had never cursed him, but of course, every injustice will be accounted for. It should be that I am now satisfied with my life and am making my daughter capable of facing the evils of society and not falling into the pit of pain like I did. Faisal is still the same, loving person.